Welcome to the Sebbylution. Today we will be learning about the grand history of our server, its origin, how it's progressed, and what's happening now. In any case, this story will be shown mostly through my perspective, but there are also many others who have contributed to the creation of Sebbylution. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The Great Familia Wars Era by Yagino-sensei. The start of the Superium is disputed by many. However, the Familias were one of the most key factors into deciding the course of history for the Superium. I suppose I should explain what the Familias were, since almost all of them have died since their glory days. The Familias you were a part of was chosen by the color you chose as a self-role in the original Otaku Lounge's role menu, which is where our story begins. Eventually, people began forming different cultures surrounding their Familias. Some examples of this was the White Familia, which was composed of mostly artists, and the Blue Familia, whom was composed of people who loved chatting in the main lounge. However, we will not be talking about those Familias, as they had no significant part in the founding of Sebby history. No, today we will focus on what was once the two most powerful Familias that the Otaku Lounge had ever seen. The Red Familia and the Purple Familia. Now, the Red Familia was led by Sebby, known as Cooler Z during this time frame. The Red Familia was a familia composed of peace lovers, and allied themselves with all the familias they could, leading to them being the strongest familia for a time. However, where the Red Familia was peaceful, the Purple was their complete opposite. Led by Flare's Onyx, the Purple Familia was completely warlike, and refused to ally with any familia that tried to join up with them. They were also basically the psychiatrists of the server, and could be found often helping people in the good day bad day chat. Even their forms of government were different. While the Red Familia ran off of one leader, the Purple Familia governed themselves with military ranks, with Flex being the leader, Yagi the Supreme General, and others holding ranks such as Assassin or Warrior. Now, since Purple was the second largest Familia, they always wanted to battle the Red Familia to claim the top spot, but Cooler Z talked them down many times. However, this all changed the day of the Great Betrayal. Key figures in the Purple Familia, like Pterodactyl, Dragoneye, and a few others left the Purple Familia for the Red Familia in under a span of a couple days. Fox Onyx found this as an attack on his Familia, and Cooler Z could no longer talk him down. Thus began the first Great Familia War. The Red Familia had many allies, spanning from the green, blue, white, and black Familias. However, the Purple Familia were battle-hardened warriors who had trained against each other for weeks, waiting for this moment. The wars used the dank Memer bot, please fight command to do battles. This battle was where many members of Superium history made a name for themselves. Cooler Z became known as a good leader, bringing people of all kinds together. Taxonis became known as the Grand Purple leader, and Yaku became known as the bloodthirsty general, for slaughtering almost all of Cooler Z's forces by himself. And although Cooler Z's forces had numbers, they fell before the mighty Purple Familia. and thus ended the first Great Familia War. Then came the next war, the Second Great Familia War. Now you see, after the First War, Kulurzi's followers, passionate, flared for vengeance. So one of the purple traders began a new trend. His name was Dragoneye, and he started the whole naming yourself Kulurzi thing, which led to the Kulurzi Republic, which now replaced the Red Familia. This action led to these memes as a part of the culture of that time. With a spark rekindled, the Kulurzi Republic began controversy. Some called themselves the Kulurzi Republic, others the Kulurzi Familia, and the Purple Familia simply called them the Kulurzi Cult. Because, come on, it was basically a cult. With a spark rekindled, the Kulurzi Republic began controversy. Some called themselves the Kulurzi Republic, others the Kulurzi Familia, and the Purple Familia simply still called them the Kulurzi Cult. They began to call for war against the Purple Familia to make reprimands for the First War. This did not go well for them. They all died. Kulurzi fell at the hands of Yagi, and Yagi took out 3 more of his followers before being taken down. However, Yagi had already done too much damage, and the remaining purple soldiers killed off the remaining cultists. The next page in history is a sad tale of misfortunes, but it eventually leads to Kulurzi's victory. Where you see, Zack, the owner of Otaku Lounge, was starting to take notice of the conflict, and he was not liking how much control the Purple Familia had on his server members. You see, Zack, in response to the Purple takeover, began to delete the Purple Familia's channels that they thrived in, such as the Good Day Bad Day chat, and also the role-playing channel. He also threatened to remove Flaxonix from the staff team, after he asked Zack to follow his own rules. Eventually, Flaxonix just got sick of the shit from Zack, and just plain up and left the server. With him, many other Purple Familia members left. The few remaining Purple Familia members were now without a leader, so eventually they just became inactive voluntarily, and the Kulurzi cult became the sole power on the server. Well, after a couple of weeks of this happening, the loyal people on the server were trying to keep it active, even though no one on the staff but Kulurzi seemed to care anymore. This led to one final war, the Third Great Familia War. It was a war where the remainders of the other familias fought against the Purple, like old time's sake. However, this time was different, as we, the Purple Familia, only had 3 active members remaining, and the Kulurzi cultists had around 12. We had taken down around 6 or 7, if I remember, but the numbers were just too many, and we fell. The final war led to Scene creating the Kulurzi Familia, where all the other familias joined, but Purple stayed out of it for a bit, out of pride, but eventually joined because they got sick of the Otaku Lounge, thus ending the era of the Great Familia Wars. Chapter 2, The Beginnings, by Asian. I'll be attempting to do a gamer Asian voice. So me and Sebby and Scene and Temple was in a VC chillin'. We were talking about something how Scene would look good in a dress, and Temp would also look good in a dress. Then me and Scene discovered about the Kulurzi name thing. How, like, you make your name Gamer Kulurzi, like that. Or some shit. Me and Scene were like, this is funny, we should make a worshipping server. So Scene made the server, Cooler joined. I joined. Temp joined. Then we started on the place you all knew and loved, the Cooler Z Familia. We had few members. We invited a lot of people from Otaku Lounge. Our first 10s were the close ones. Then Zack joined, as well. Then Yagi. Then that fateful night, the man appeared. Abby Body. Oh, and Java was one of the first to join, too. So, he came in VC and made N-word sounds. Gasp. He was pretty much the second most toxic person I have ever met, so we banned him. I don't know who banned him. I think it was me or Steen. Anyways, after that we did stuff and, hold up. I can't remember what happens. I don't remember when Miyagi joined, but when he spoke in VC, everyone instantly came. It was wet. Back to my voice. We kinda got off topic past this point, as me and Sausage were helping Asian in this chapter, so this is kind of the point where Chapter 2 ends. Chapter 3. The Golden Age. Indeed, the beginnings of the Kurzi Familia were not the most graceful. In fact, the whole thing was one massive meme of a server. However, one thing was clear. It was more active and fun than the Otaku Lounge. So many people who were once inactive slowly came back and joined the server, as well as having many new members join. The server specialized in many of the channels that Otaku Lounge removed, such as the role-playing channel. We also ran a massive ring of Pokecord gyms, area back when Pokecord was still around. Competition was massive, as the server added more and more bots. More and more people came to join. You could always find someone in the VCs, and when one would join, many more would join, thus sparking a massive VC party. The only bad thing about the Golden Age was it was still Cooler Z cult, meaning Cooler Z was still basically viewed as God. Now, in most cases, this would just be funny. However, not in this one. For you see, because of Cooler Z's title of God, he was raped almost daily in the NSFW section of the server by a harem of girls, traps, and guys. Now, this might have made a big influence on what Cooler Z would do in the following months, when Scene handed over the server to him. The server had reached around 100+ members when it finally reached the end of the Golden Age. Now, Cooler Z was not a bad owner. In fact, under his leadership, the server kept growing. However, when Cooler Z was handed the reins of ownership, the ideals of the Familias would forever be wiped from Superium history. Chapter 4. Fall of the Familia. Rise of the Cafe. Now, the Cooler Z Familia had a long run, lasting about 3 months. However, all things must change over time. And this change happened to the server through the transfer of ownership from Scene to Cooler Z, which would lead to many changes, some good, while others bad. Following the ownership transfer, Cooler Z changed his name to Sebby, as someone compared him to Sebastian in a VR chat, and thus he changed the server from Familia to a cafe. In doing this, led to a great number of new members joining, as he now was gaining partnerships with many other servers, and had people daily post invites in the Otaku Lounge. However, in doing this, he almost completely wiped out the Familia culture, as it now only was held on by a small number of the OGs. Despite the Familia being almost demolished, and some of the OGs being unhappy with the cafe, and preferred the Familia, the cafe was constantly growing daily, and at its peak, reached around 250+ members. However, soon the fire of passion for the server Sebby had was gone, and he left for a few weeks and left his staff in charge of the server in that time. And this is where things really started to go downhill. Chapter 5. The Emigration. After the Cooler Z Familia was removed and was replaced by the Sebby Cafe, There was a time of mass confusion and chaos on the server. One of the first issues that arose was the cultist civil war. Although no fighting ever took place, cultists were confused as to what to worship. Many still walked around with cooler Z names, while others transferred to Sebby names. While others just plain forsaked the cultist culture and went with normal names. Either way, tensions on the server began to rise. This continued on for about 4 weeks, before people just naturally began to change into their normal names, or non-cultist nicknames. This lessened tensions a little, however soon things would get worse again. Sebby announced that he would be taking a break from Discord for a while, and that Gwyn was in charge until he came back. He was sad, but everyone expected it to be all good. Well, no one saw what was to come. It started slowly, with 2 people messing at everyone and messing with online members. They were fended off in a 2v1 roasting battle against me, which they lost and were eventually kicked by staff. Everyone had a good laugh, and we carried out our day. The next day they were back again, and doing the same as before. A little annoyed this time, we went into a second roasting battle, and I was a lot harsher. Eventually they were kicked again, and we all had a good laugh. A few days later, however, they came back again with a third person. Indeed, this time they challenged me directly. They had 3 people, but used the same roast, so it was my victory again. They were banned this time, around as me and a few other people were actually starting to get annoyed. I was surprised when they had been unbanned and let back into the server. As I had not been staff at the time, I did not see who unbanned them, but I had a good feeling who it was when I saw this certain staff member watching them annoy the regular members. We went into another roasting battle, which was by far the longest, as it lasted over an hour and 30 minutes, until a staff member came online and banned them again. The staff member that had allegedly unbanned them was literally dissatisfied, said she had wanted to see more roasting done. I was pissed. Although I made my opinion on the matter clear, they were still unbanned, and they repeated the process a total of 8 times. Sebby came back, and I went to him to do something about the situation. He said the staff could handle it, and I shouldn't question it. I believe this was the straw that broke the camel's back. In all of the partner servers, there was gossip among the ex-members and the still on Sebby Cafe members about how it had grown so toxic. Over the next couple of weeks, more people began to leave, replaced by inactive members who only joined through the ads, but had no love for the server itself. Until eventually, Sebby himself left the server, and handed it over to War Captain, thus ending the Emigration. On a side note, here was the letter that I wrote on the Sebby's Cafe that better explains some of the issues going on at the time that weren't in the chapter. Many of the OGs who left similar letters, however, I can not retrieve them as the original cafe had been deleted. I will explain that later on. I will not be reading my letter, but you can actually go look at it yourself and read through it if you want. I personally won't be reading it because this still has a lot of emotional backlash for me. And basically, at the end of it I said, please don't delete my gym because I'd rather have something there. They totally deleted my gym straight afterwards, so yeah, I still dislike the people who did that to this day. Anyways, let's move on. Chapter 6, The Revitalization. People who can only speculate why Sebby gave the ownership to War Captain, of all people. However, what was done was done. It's believed that War Captain was the only staff member online when Sebby was looking to transfer ownership, and she took the deal despite having little to no interaction in the server. I, however, cannot confirm this rumor, as I was no longer in the server when this happened. Regardless, this did not change the fact that once Sebby left, War Captain was the new owner. People were afraid she'd make many big changes, but this never happened. No, what happened was worse. War Captain had little to no interest in running the server. Thus, the server slowly began to die, due to neglect from the ownership. Despite all of this, there was only one man who stood in the path of the total wipeout of the server. His name was Gamer, the author of Chapter 2. Gamer, at the time, was merely a butler on the server. However, he did all his power to revitalize the server, and make sure it didn't completely die. Although he was not the owner in name, he was indeed the true owner of the server when War Captain came and took over. Single-handedly, he brought back staff members who had gone inactive on the server for weeks, some even months. And with those staff members, news spread that the cafe was active once again, and many people came back. With active members returning, the chat channels quickly filled up, and the server started steadily gaining members once again. Though many like Yagi and Jojo came back, some like Temp never returned. It seemed like the server was experiencing a second golden age, despite the negligence from War Captain. It had gotten so fired up that even Sebby came back to the server. However, only a few hours after Sebby had returned to Sebby's cafe, the darkest time in Sebperium history occurred, that caused mass waves of confusion and chaos, thus ending the revitalization. Chapter 7. The Fall. When Sebby returned to the server, it had reached around 250 plus members in total. However, this would not last long, as only a few hours after Sebby returned, the server was gone. There was no word of warning or explanation. It was simply gone in an instant. Some people were role-playing when it happened. Others were in other servers, some chatting in the main chat, and some were just offline. However, all reacted with the same wave of shock and confusion regardless. People at first thought they were banned. However, after looking at former perm invites, realized that the server was deleted. In an instant, people started trying to form up and get a clue of what to do. The staff of the Sebby's cafe made a server to gather all the confused members they could. This would later become the first Sebperium. However, they had a competitor. A man who went by the name of Syndicate had a server of only 6, took advantage of the confusion and roped in as many members as he could, going to 40 plus. This server was the Yandere Empire, later becoming the LGBT community, and then HH. They went through a lot of changes. However, once people heard of Sebperium by the cafe staff and Sebby, they quickly rushed over. However, this would not be the last of HH. Sebby rewarded Syndicate staff position on the Sebperium for helping gather some members, and Sebby became a co-owner of the HH. Soon it was revealed that it was War Captain who had deleted the cafe, and its members wanted vengeance, thus leading to the Tanoshii raids. Chapter 8. The Tanoshii raids. The Tanoshii raids were one of the moments in Sebperium history really felt like the original Cours de Familia in a sense. Sebby, who had not been active for a long time, had organized a group of around 12 guys to spam the Tanoshii server demanding justice. Hoshiguma and Sebby were our inside men, while guys like Gamer, Yagi, Dragoneye spammed every channel we could. By the end of it, not a single channel was left untouched before we all got banned. So, what led up to such a massive raid? What would cause this? Well, War Captain was a high-ranking member on the server, and she did little to quell the anger of the mob. As you can see through these images, she showed very little remorse over what she had done. And yes, she deleted the server over a stupid gore channel, instead of removing it, or just talking it out with the other members. You just up and delete it like a... Excuse my language. We didn't only target Tanoshii, we also targeted her DMs. Now we had people spamming her, people spamming the server. At one point, she had over 2,000 DMs. Sadly, I do not have a screenshot of this moment. Now there is some controversy with the whole Tanoshii raid situation. I personally later regretted the raid, as I had no personal grudge against the server owner or any other members of that server. Only War Captain was my enemy. The raid hurt both servers, as they both had members who were active in both servers, and the raids forced them to choose a side. I believe he should have stuck to spamming the hell out of Captain's DMs, but you can't change history. Regardless, it was a fun moment at the time of companionship. After the raids were over, Syndicate barred us from doing any more raids from the Yandere Empire, but we persisted onwards through the newly built Sebbylution. After the Tanoshii raids were over, Sebbylution became a pretty easygoing server that allowed its members to really do whatever they wanted, until the Great Betrayal occurred. Chapter 9. The Great Betrayal. Sebbylution was, when it was first built, a server that was really easygoing and laid back about rules. All of staff had custom names like Tentacle God or CEO. These would continue while Gwen would own the server. However, one day she made a mistake. Gwen was updating roles for a few people, and then while she was updating the roles for Syndicate, she accidentally transferred the ownership of the server to him. Of course, she and the other staff immediately asked for it back, but Syndicate refused. He immediately started spreading his influence over the server, putting up yaoi NSFW channels, and started banning staff and members and other people who disagreed with him. Luckily, there was still one man to prevent Syndicate from doing any more damage. His name was Cooler Z. Sebby soon realized that when Syndicate took over the server, he was changing the server to his own wicked image, and the beloved Sebbylution would soon be gone. So Sebby made a split-second decision that saved many people from witnessing the tragedy. As he still had staff, he started banning as many people as he could. He started with the OGs, then the active members, until he reached the inactive members. Syndicate realized too late, and Sebby just plain left the server before he could ban him. Thus, the second Sebbylution where we reside currently was made. Now, surprisingly, the punishment for Syndicate was not that severe. No one ever raided him, he simply wasn't allowed on the new Sebbylution. I, Yagi, however, did not like this punishment at all. So I hatched a different plan. After Syndicate later deleted the Sebbylution, as there was no one on it, he went offline for about 2 weeks, and within those 2 weeks, I sat in his DMs asking, "What happened to the server?" like an innocent bystander. He finally responded saying he hadn't deleted the server, but I knew this was false already. I played along, said I didn't judge him for it. I later said he should focus on building up his old server, formerly known as the Andari Empire, now known as HH, that we had started together. He agreed. Thus we managed to grab over 40 people for the server, and though he blatantly lied about the server on the ad. His ad was, "Welcome to your loving, supportive server. Here we have nice emotes." We had a few. Waifu bots and yaoi bots, we did not have that. Fun bots, we didn't really have any of those. Roleplay channels, not really. A cool community, it was mostly dead. And a self-doubt view, well, yes, we did have that. And he also claimed to have 500 emojis. We had like 7. Anime. There was no anime channel. Active voice chats. Like I said, it was an inactive server. A friendly community. Like I said, if you consider it friendly and active, then sure. Giveaways and events. This never happened. Custom bots, no. Gambling, no. Special roles. There was a noob role, other than that, no. Clubs, none. Gaming, none. We never had a Minecraft server. And there was not a lot more. In fact, there was none. So, yeah. Not the best server. In fact, everything on the ad was a complete lie. Well, except the name, of course, but he soon changed that as well, so it became a lie too. Anyway, enough of stories about how Syndicate tried to scam people. We're here for how the First Imperium was avenged. So I had decided to give Syndicate many opportunities to change, or to prove he could be a good person if he tried. Yet each time, he always failed. The first time I saw an opportunity of redemption was when he asked me to help him build a server, since he had forgotten the password to his owner, Alt on HH. I, at the time, agreed, not knowing what he had planned. He told me he was going to make it a sort of dating server for gay people as a sanctuary. I, of course, pulled up the fact that I wasn't gay and wasn't really comfortable making the server. However, he persisted that I was the only one who could help him, and spammed my DMs constantly till I agreed. Now, as a lot of server owners know, building a server takes time. Syndicate, however, disagreed, and demanded I complete the server in one day. Self-rolls, auto-rolls, emojis, channels and all. Of course, I objected, but as I had a long-term plan in mind, I played along with the demands, and actually managed to complete the server in one day, believe it or not. I guess it was little compared to the long run. Anyways, after I had finished everything on the server, I had literally done it all by myself, Syndicate finally told me what the server was about. As he said before, it was a gay server, but what he had forgotten to mention about the server was it was open to the underaged. I was against this completely. We argued back and forth for a bit till I said I had to go to sleep in real life, which was true. He said fine, and we talked in the morning. As I went to sleep, he banned me from the server, he did nothing to build, and now had no members. I sadly had no time to take screenshots of the server, as I had not expected Syndicate to reach this low in terms of morals. I asked him why I had been banned as soon as I came on. He said I was banned because I was asexual, or as I like to prefer, ace, and the server was only for gay men, though I didn't see a single gay man build a damn thing on that server. No biggie, I had to play it cool for now. I had to play it cool to get my true vengeance. Over the next month, he DM'd me, almost daily, asking for favors, and trying to get me to do stuff for him constantly. I was honestly sick of it. I knew pretending to be someone meek and willing to do commands if pushed persistently was a horrible thing to do, but the stuff I was discovering about Syndicate actually made me vomit. The times I spent with Syndicate was by far some of the most toxic times of my lifetime, as I saw how Syndicate, when he asked for something, he didn't ask, he demanded. The DMs happened almost every time I was online or even offline. Sometimes I'd literally go invisible for a week just to avoid him. Then one day, I saw my golden opportunity. As I was in my personal server, Kingdom of Rulers, Syndicate was like usual, pinging me in the server, demanding I go to DMs. I go there, and he's wanting to start another bloody server. And what do you know? He wants me to build it. I say I'm going to eat. Of course he responds angrily, so I just turn off my phone and try to cool off from my anger. Then when I come back, I see one DM that piques my interest. A new member, Famitsu, who had joined the server recently, had asked me to talk. I ask, what's up? And then she forms a complaint about Syndicate, how he's always rude when he's in the server, and he just gave her bad vibes. This is where I start to worry about my plan, as his toxicity is starting to affect even normal members. I sought counsel from my head moderator, Bounce, and my leader, Flex, and they agree he just gave them bad vibes, and he always pings them and acts like he's above them when he was just a regular member. I was about to ban him when I got a glorious idea. I DM him instead. I tell him he needs to change his attitude to a more positive attitude on the server, or else we will ban him. He responds with, huh? Then leaves the server. He had fallen for my trap. For you see, this was his last chance to prove himself and be a good person, and avoid what came next. I show people the message I sent him that was only positive, and his response. The people on the server were outraged, and said good riddance. This is where my 2-month plan came into place. I riled up my members, that they had a bloodlust for Syndicate now. I then decided to tell them a part of the story that was enough for them to start yelling for war. This is where HH comes in. You see, Syndicate had forgotten the password to his alt account that owns the server. Despite it being the biggest one he owns, owned. What he didn't remember was that I had the second highest position on the server. You see, I was a server owner by role. My audience, Famitsu, Cheese, Oshigami, after hearing a fraction of the story, were eager to hop onto the server. I made a public invite, and they all joined. However, I plan to do no raiding myself. I simply made everyone on the server a co-owner and watched. Although all thoughts of former comradeship with Syndicate I once had were once gone, HH was built only by me. It was owned by Syndicate, so in my eyes, I would now own it. But I would have my friends tear it down. No, tear down was not the right word. Reformed is much better. Reformed into a better image. When I gave everyone co-owner, I expected some to defend Syndicate, but any who came online either just laughed or helped us. I of course decided to give him all of his alts a server noob role, a role he himself had made to give to people he didn't like, which was ironic in a sense. When he finally came on, he just stood there, stunned at what happened. Then we banned him in his alts, thus ending the story as to how the server of HH, where the original Tanoshii raids happened, was in turn raided by the Kingdom of Rulers, in revenge for the deletion of the first Imperium, became this, the Yagi-sama's Great Server. Chapter 10. The Transition. After the HH raid, the server tended to quiet down a bit. No large dramatic events of note seemed to take place after this event. Eventually, Cooler Z decided to quit being the Discord owner and handed ownership over to Asian, where Cooler Z then just became a regular member of the server. Eventually, Zach, the owner of the server where it all started, Otaku Lounge, decided to delete the server, stating it was completely dead, which it was. However, Asian decided to not let the memory of Otaku Lounge die. Switched the Subperium to Otaku Lounge 2.0, later becoming just the Otaku Lounge, leading to a long, bloody history of the Subperium in the past, and returning to the roots of the server. The server never really quite got out of the stalemate in terms of server members, never being able to return to the former membership of 250 plus members. However, this is still a goal of this server today, as the Otaku Lounge continues to improve itself. A bit of an anticlimactic ending. However, while the server is still running, more people may be added, and perhaps you will become a major part in its future history. End of Chapter 10.